plans to accommodate in-person absentee voters, a city Office of African American Affairs, and a unique new development in the heart of North Avenue. This is Council Rewind, and I'm Dustin Weiss. Milwaukee officials were among the first to cry foul when the state legislature passed restrictions on the amount of time and number of locations at which municipalities can offer in-person absentee voting. More commonly called early voting, the practice allows voters to cast an absentee ballot at a city facility ahead of the actual November 8th election. But when a judge's surprise ruling overturned those restrictions a few weeks back, the race was on to make preparations and offer the service to Milwaukee citizens, leading to a new debate at the September 12th meeting of the Judiciary and Legislation Committee.
Where we are certainly all in agreement is that after about a decade of advocacy, it did take a federal judge to lift the restrictions that had previously been put into place regarding in-person absentee voting in the state of Wisconsin. We've been a strong advocate for those changes. I myself testified in the One Wisconsin Institute lawsuit, the federal Western District case advocating for the lifting of restrictions related to in-person absentee voting and other changes that have rolled out, which have been significant in terms of impact on voter participation over the last 5 or 6 years. I'd say the one unfortunate aspect of the lifting of this restriction, which is somewhat consistent with quite a few changes related to election law, is that it occurred just over 10 weeks prior to the presidential election. And so that what that required me to do, as well as staff from the Election Commission, was to really conduct a thorough assessment of what our opportunity here was and to identify a balance between providing the maximum amount of access to in-person absentee voting, but also not creating such a substantial risk by overextending the expertise of staff that we could compromise our performance during in-person absentee voting or during the actual election itself. I've had it during the 2012 presidential election, for example, where a temporary worker at the Zeidler building inadvertently made a statement to a media representative that became news for quite a period of time. So we need to recognize that the schedule that we roll out and our performance around this extended in-person absentee voting is going to be very closely scrutinized. Observers will be present at all of these satellite sites, and that our performance on election day will be scrutinized as well. I also want to note that we did something of a national review. We looked at the schedule for in-person absentee voting in nearby states such as Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, and how they orchestrated their in-person or early voting opportunity. Probably the one that our plan resembles the most is the one which is used in the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago utilizes the maximum 6 weeks prior to the federal election for their in-person absentee voting. The first 2 weeks, they do it out of their city clerk's office, and the 4 weeks preceding the election, they use their satellite locations. Prior to the lifting of these restrictions, we were at 110 hours. That's what we were able to offer in 2014. It's important to note that even back in 2008, the maximum number of hours that were offered for in-person absentee voting were 138. So what our schedule presently includes is 725 hours of in-person absentee voting. That's a 600% increase over any previous election. And that includes the establishment of 2 additional satellite sites above and beyond our use of both sides of the Zeidler building. If you've been over there, we use the Broadway side for people who need to register to vote. We use the Market Street side for people who are already registering. A tremendous amount of thought was used in terms of identifying these sites based on where we see large populations or large populations of residents turning out and taking advantage of in-person absentee voting opportunities. Certainly our selection of the Forest Home Library as one of those sites is representative of our commitment to Milwaukee's selection or identification as a Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act municipality where we need to be particularly and would want to be particularly cognizant of language barriers and other barriers that have sometimes prevented Hispanic and Latino people in the city of Milwaukee from voting. It is, capacity is a word that I have had to use often in the last couple of weeks because it's important to note that in-person absentee voting procedures are actually considerably more complex than procedures that are employed at a polling place on election day. And there is an expertise, a management expertise, and a staffing expertise that is required at each one of these sites to ensure that an error isn't made. And with the 3 sites we're looking at, we're anticipating hiring and training approximately 100 to 120 people to work at these sites in the next 2 weeks for our September 26th implementation. We're also then looking at having those workers shadow experienced workers for that first 2 weeks at the Zeidler building. And that will help us prepare for implementation of in-person absentee voting at these satellite sites where we're at sites that we've never worked at before. The city has never had satellite sites for in-person absentee voting. And again, we want to make sure that we do this correctly and that we don't do anything that compromises this opportunity, but also that we're fully prepared for Election Day. Because on Election Day, it is important to note that as significant as in-person absentee voting is to this city, we will have approximately 225,000 people turn out at 194 different voting sites.
I think it's incumbent on us to fulfill that prime responsibility to the maximum extent permitted by law, which, as I understand it now, is early in-person absentee beginning on September 26th, correct?
That's correct.
And we're allowed to have remote locations, is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no real restrictions on those remote locations as long as they meet ADA and are otherwise more or less publicly accessible, is that correct?
That's correct.
So while we could have the remote locations you're proposing, there is no legal prohibition to establishing remote locations at major educational institutions where there are tens of thousands of eligible voters, many of whom don't vote, such as MATC in particular, UWM to a lesser extent, and Marquette to even a further lesser extent, because they're the smallest of the 3. Case of UWM, and especially Marquette, most of the people early voting at those locations or voting absentee would be voting there anyway on Election Day because they're going to be living in the neighborhood. So why we're not doing that is because we can't hire enough people, and I say hire the people.
I think, Alderman Bowman, that you make some very good points, and in fact, many of those points we probably share. Where I struggle with is I can't diminish the capacity issue, and my concern is the more we stretch or diminish that capacity concern, the greater risk to the city that something could go wrong. And certainly with the scrutiny that is going to occur of this opportunity, nothing could contribute more to a rescinding of this opportunity than if something goes wrong in the city of Milwaukee. So I want to be very everything I plan in terms of preparation for this 6 weeks is around ensuring that we can do it, that we can provide the access, and that we can do it well. I also just want to, point out that the city has a 100 square mile radius. And if we were able to add additional satellite sites, MATC is 8 blocks from the Zeidler building. I'm not sure that that is truly the greatest investment in resources, given how much of the city that we're not able to cover by the 2 satellite sites that we have been able to establish. And then finally, with regard to the budget, I appreciate the availability of those dollars. I think, I know that the mayor has been very dedicated, and the budget office has been very dedicated to funding this expansion. To go from 110 hours to 295 hours is a significant investment. We're currently talking about $250,000 in unbudgeted funds to support this expansion because of the extra staffing, the 2 extra sites.
Neil, concern I would have is there's no budget as to what the cost is to implementing these locations, whether it's at Marquette, UWM, or MATC, and I think I don't feel good voting for resolutions when I don't know what I'm voting on in terms of cost. I am concerned about the personnel, obviously, in terms of having adequate personnel to be able to do it in a manner in which the public expects the high level of professionalism that we offer through the Election Commission. And of course, it is going to be a very contentious election with monitors, and we need to do this, obviously, in a manner which is perceived as fair and equitable. So appreciate where Alderman Johnson is and Alderman Baum and Alderman Perez have on this issue, but those concerns would bother me in terms of voting for this.
In-person absentee voting will run until November 5th in Milwaukee, and you can learn everything you need to know about voting, including how to register, at milwaukee.gov/election. In response to concerns about jobs, crime, and quality of life, some council members have taken a cue from other levels of government and proposed the creation of an Office of African American Affairs in city government. The manager of the office will be tasked with examining the issues and making recommendations for city policies that would produce improvements. And on September 7th, sponsors made their pitch to the Community and Economic Development Committee.
I'm pretty sure, as you all are aware of, what has transpired here in Milwaukee this past month, what I, myself, and many others believe is a culmination of the laissez-faire approach that government has when it relates to the quality of life for African Americans here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So what I'm calling on is the city of Milwaukee to create an Office on African American Affairs, which I would equate to a FEMA. We have an emergency here in Wisconsin, here in Milwaukee, as it relates to African Americans. We have the distinction of being the absolute worst place to live if you happen to be an African American man, woman, or child. The metrics being the disparity between the white student and the black student, small business creation, infant mortality, unemployment, health, and it's long due time that government steps in and addresses this issue. Now, the Office on African American Affairs is designed to create programs, it's designed to create policy, to modify policy, and to improve the city of Milwaukee's efforts as it relates to equal opportunity of all residents. I'm accompanied here today with the alderman, the former alderman Willie Wade of the 7th District, who actually was the initial sponsor of this resolution. And with that being said, I'd like to thank him, call him to the table. But I encourage my colleagues to support this measure. Although we do have that distinction of being the worst place in America for African American people, it's a prime opportunity for us to turn it all around and show America how you improve the quality of life for African American people. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. It's an honor to present this before you.
It is an honor, and Alderman Rennie, I want to commend you on this leadership for for bringing this to the city. I know you did it at the county, and I know they're working on the Office of African American Affairs on the county, and I was excited at the press conference. I attended it, and now it has come to the city. And under our watch,
Indeed.
as elected officials,
Well, the city
as
of
black
Milwaukee.
men representing black districts and being responsible for the community, I don't want to be known for the worst in every category as a black individual and as representing a city.
I just want to go on record saying I absolutely agree that we are in a state of emergency right now, and that calls for something special, and it calls for something extra or additional to what we've already been doing. And we need to make sure that we are focusing on the African American community, which feels like they've been left out of development, of economic, just overall everything.
In light of some of the events that have happened lately in this community, especially in Sherman Park, a number of us have put out press releases and have been out there on the ground and talked about the issues that have been going on. And I've said that Sherman Park, while it's a great neighborhood, the incidents that happen there are not unique to that neighborhood. There are several Sherman Parks around the community that could explode at any moment. And these are the communities that are affected, that would be affected by this sort of legislation, moving them in a better position, in a better direction.
Even before the recent unrest in this city, we have all read the statistical analysis of the condition of African American people in the city of Milwaukee. And although it may make us mad, it also informs us. And the thing about the power of knowledge and information is, it is one thing to be able to rattle the statistics off. It is another thing to know them and do something about them. And although in each of our work every single day we are attempting to do something about them, it always helps to have a specific focus on things. And even in the wake of Sherman Park, as people attempt to do what they know how to do to help change the conditions, until there is true systematic and structural change to all of the causal factors for the conditions we've witnessed over the last couple of weeks, we are likely to witness it again. And I think the creation of an Office on African American Affairs with a focus on our condition and on ways in which, at least policy-wise, we have an ability to change some things systematically are one great effort and one great step in the direction for truly creating some level of legislative, policy, and systematic change for people of African descent in this city.
The proposal passed the full council on a 14-0 vote. More positive momentum is building for development in the heart of the North Avenue corridor. Recent developments in the area include St. Anne's Intergenerational Care Center, the YMCA, the Social Development Commission, and a commons featuring an Outpost's Natural Foods. And on September 13th, the Zoning, Neighborhoods, and Development Committee heard a plan to turn the abandoned Blommer Ice Cream building into new housing.
This site is located within the Fond du Lac and North Comprehensive Area Plan. It is near existing commercial properties, and it's just a block west of Walnut Way and the Juice Kitchen, as well as the Outpost. To the east is a vacant lot and community gardens, as well as residential uses. The site includes the former Blommer Ice Cream building, which is going to be converted for new residential use, which is very exciting, as well as a new multifamily development as well. That will be 4-story mixed use. They are proposing to increase the density by 20 units, so a total of 64 units are being proposed.
There's 39 one-bedroom units, 15 two-bedroom units, 8 three-bedroom units, and 2 4-bedroom units. 36 units will be in the Blommer building, and 28 units will be in the new construction building. 16 units are set aside as WIDA supportive housing units, and on the new construction building in the southwest corner. There's about 2,000 square feet of commercial space that was actually a modification to the project in response to some of the community interest in having commercial space on the corridor. So we are planning to have Legacy Redevelopment Corp., Legacy Midwest Renewal Corporation locate our office in one of those commercial spaces. There'll also be a property management office in the development in one of the commercial spaces. And if there's additional space, we're looking to have retail space leased to a not yet identified building, but it would company, but it would be permissible under LB2 zoning. We'd love to see a little small coffee shop or ice cream shop in the third retail space, but we do have the commitment of our own company to office there. Some of the amenities of this development, in addition to the Blommer building that's existing now, we are going to have a community room and an outdoor patio. There's on-site property management office that will be in the retail space of the new construction building. We're committed to meeting 150 points of the Wisconsin Green Built Checklist, rehabilitation on the new existing building, and Energy Star appliances for the tenants.
The first rendering that I am going to show you is actually of the existing Blommer building. This is how it's going to look after we rehab it to its former historic glory. So you'll see that we've put all of the windows back into the original window openings. We'll also be restoring and reviving the main entrance to the building with aluminum and glass doors, as well as replicas of the sconces that are flanking the doors and new ironwork above the doors and the transom windows. We will also be repairing and cleaning the glazed terracotta and brickwork on the facade of the building, and we'll be adding new elements to the secondary facade of the building, which we'll see a little bit later on some other renderings, to really complement the existing historic but not conflict with it. This will be the new construction piece, will be located on the west side of the development. We're very excited about the new construction piece as well, primarily because we really like that we've added in this commercial component to the development. You'll have over 2,000 square feet of commercial space here, and it'll be designed with an aluminum and glass storefront system. The building itself is cementitious siding along with a smooth concrete base that surrounds the building and vinyl windows that will be located on the residential units. The site plan here is important because it shows you the accessible routes through the building. The existing Blommer building, the entrance on North Avenue that currently exists is not accessible. So what we've done is we've added two accessible entrances into the building, one located on the west side of the building, as you can see by the dotted lines between the new building and the existing Blommer building, as well as an entrance on the north side of the existing Blommer building. 360-degree view, aerial view of the building. We wanted to show you the whole development as it's going to be because it really shows you how we're promoting a new active space along North Avenue with the addition of the commercial space located in the new building, as well as really creating a sense of place in the existing Blommer building, in a building that's been underutilized for many, many years. So we think this is a really going to be an added exciting development in an area that's developing incredibly quickly as it is. It's going to complement the Juice Bar and the Outpost and Jake's Deli, and hopefully the fourth stop will be at a coffee house that will be located in the new building where people can study and meet and hang out.
Or the new Blommer's ice cream shop there.
Or the new Blommer's ice cream shop. I like it. And lastly, we have the north side of the building, which shows the community deck area as well as the greenery that we have promoted along the north side of the building.
We're committed to high engagement of emerging small and women-owned enterprises. The goal of the infra session that I mentioned on Monday, September 19th, is to provide our subcontractors and potentially unemployed tradespersons with an opportunity to meet the development team and engage and ask questions and really work out any issues that they might have seen to bid for the project. So we have an outreach plan, and we're working with targeting city, county, and state contractors, as well as those that we know in our network and that Agent Development knows in their network. And then also the construction management firm Greenfire has experience meeting and exceeding EBE goals. And for this project, We have multiple forms of contact and follow-up in place to work with some of the subcontractors that might need a little more support.
How many jobs will be created in the redevelopment and new construction of this project?
We are anticipating about 96 construction jobs will be created, and then there'll be 2 permanent jobs with the property management.
Have you all internally set SBE and RPP goals?
Yes, so we, the development actually is not subject to RPP. However, we do have EBE goals. We are looking to meet 30% EBE. However, that is with WIDA. We would like to exceed that goal.
What about the hiring for people from the city of Milwaukee?
Yes, we are doing workforce development as well in the zip code for the development, as well as a couple of the surrounding zip codes. And our goal there is to at least have 1 in each trade.
We're going to do a lot of outreach in the neighborhood, and the big strength of that area is everybody is over there working together to improve the area. A lot of growth, a lot of investment, a lot of momentum. So I appreciate you guys coming to the area. And I appreciate this project. It's a big project, and I think it'll fit right in with all the investment over there. So,
Alderman Stamper,
Shelley, you wanted to introduce yourself?
Hi, Sally.
It's Sally Peltz, and I'm the CEO of Legacy Redevelopment Corp. and Legacy Midwest Renewal Corporation. So, first of all, let me just tell you that I'm retiring at the end of the year, so that this team is the legacy. This is what we all have been working on since '99 when we started the bank. And I couldn't be prouder to be leaving at this point, hopefully going on the board of directors, and being able to say, look what we've built. And all of us know around this table that it takes years, unfortunately. But I can tell you that with Larry and Sharon, and with Greenfire, and with our development team, all the conversation that was very disturbing to me this morning in terms of some projects in the city, there is a problem. There is some kind of a disconnect that is going on, and if we can't figure it out, then nobody can. And I don't mean to be flippant about that, but I'm beginning to see what is fact and what's fiction in this town. And I can tell you that when we finish this project, hopefully we'll be able to give you some information as to what we have experienced. Because Sharon and Larry and the rest of the team are devoted to making sure our numbers are what they're supposed to be. I can promise you that. But if we have problems, then we've got a problem. And I know all of us understand that.
Thank you. So thank you guys so much. This is exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I know Larry and Sharon will do a good job. We've been in contact. And now we're going to do as much hiring and much training as possible. And see, the goal, not only for the 15th district, just for a higher goal, is developing a pipeline of workers trained and prepared to work in the 15th district and be available for work outside for the entire city. So this is a big project. This is a beginning of a pipeline of workers that are going to be trained and ready for work, and we're using your project to do it. So thank you guys so much, and I'm looking forward to this development.
The plan passed with the unanimous support. And that's a look back at some of the important issues from the most recent Common Council cycle. For the City Channel and Council Rewind, I'm Dustin Weiss.